I'm in a paranormal activity rabbit hole right now. Let's fucking do it. Similarly to the first movie, Paranormal Activity 2 opens up with this title card saying Paramount would like to thank the families of the deceased. So we know some shit's about to go down. And then we open up and we meet a new family. Because we meet Christy, her husband Dan, their new son Hunter. Like, we literally meet them as they're bringing him home from the hospital as a newborn. And Allie, who is Dan's daughter from a previous relationship. But very quickly, we meet a familiar face because we learn that Christy's sister is Katie from the first movie. So the first thing we see is Dan and Christy's house gets burglarized. They come home one day, everything's torn apart, shit's broken. They're freaking out because they just brought home a new baby, and their nanny Martine is saying that there are evil spirits in the house. So because of this assumed burglary, they get cameras installed throughout the whole house, and that's essentially what this movie is told through, is the footage of these security cameras. So we start to watch everything through the security cameras, and one of the main things we see is that the pool cleaner comes out every night, seemingly by itself. It's in there at night, and then the next morning it's outside of the pool. We see this start to happen. Everybody's getting kind of freaked out, and we see that Katie's there. So again, Katie being the sister of Christy, she's bringing Mika over. They're having cookouts together. And there's a title card saying that this is 60 days before the death of Mika, which we know happened from the first movie. Weird shit continues to happen, and Christy tries to talk to Katie about it, saying, like, this is reminding me of what happened to us when we were kids. And anytime she brings it up, Katie kind of deflects. There's one night where Hunter, now a toddler, gets up and starts, like, waving to something in the corner of his room. The dog's acting weird the whole fucking time. And then one day, Christy finds the picture of Katie from the first movie, and she says that she did not think this picture existed because of the fire that happened when they were kids. Weird shit continues to happen progressively. Martine tries to sage the house, and Dan proceeds to be a total asshole and fire her for it because he doesn't believe in that witchy shit, and he's told her not to do it before. Christy starts to notice that Hunter, the baby, starts like focusing on shit behind her, like in the corner of the room. She tries to tell Dan, of course, he doesn't believe it at all. Shit continues to escalate. The pool cleaner is still coming out of the pool at night, and pots and pans are just flying off the rack in the middle of the night. Then it starts to attack Allie. So one night she falls asleep on the couch and she wakes up gasping. And later she says that that happened because she heard something calling her name. One night Allie's left home alone with Hunter babysitting, and she finds the front door creaked open. When she goes to investigate, it slams and locks her out of the house. And then we see Hunter getting pulled out of his crib and picked up by an unseen force. So at this point, Allie's super freaked out. Her dad is not believing her at all, and she starts researching on her own. And she finds information about how if a human makes a deal with a demon for some benefit, the payment for that benefit is the person's firstborn male heir. And if that debt is not paid, the demon will follow the defaulter until a part of their family has a male son and the soul is collected. So now we understand why this thing is taking such a liking to Hunter, who Allie also mentions is the first male in their family on Christy's side since the 1930s. Weird shit continues to happen until one night it escalates to the point where Abby, the family's dog, ends up having a seizure and is found unconscious. So Dan and Allie take her to the vet. When they do that, they leave Christy alone, and we see that she is attacked by an unseen force and literally dragged out of Hunter's room and down the stairs. She's dragged into the basement, which we have seen through the whole movie has kind of been like a focal point. Like Abby has been scratching at the basement door. There's been a lot of focus on this door. The next day, Dan leaves Allie alone with Christy and Hunter, unaware that Christy has become possessed by this demon. She's just completely catatonic. She's not well. So Daniel comes home to Allie freaking out, and she shows him the footage of Christy being attacked. And after firing her, he decides he's got to call Martine because she was fucking right. So she comes back and she starts to do some shit, and she tells Daniel that the only way to get rid of this is if we pass it on to somebody else, and it has to be somebody who's a blood relative of Christy. AKA, we gotta pass it on to Katie. Allie is like, we can't do that. That's literally Christy's sister. And Dan is like, well, that's my wife and son, so I'm gonna do whatever I need to do. So that night, Christy again is totally catatonic, and she ends up running into the basement. Dan follows her, and absolute chaos ensues, but he manages to get this crucifix and stick it on Christy's chest. He then picks Christy up and puts her to bed, and we see an image of Dan burning this photo of Katie, which we see the burnt photo in the first movie, and this subsequently passes the demon on to Katie. Because this whole thing takes place in August 2006 when the first Paranormal Activity events took place in September 2006, so this is a prequel. A few weeks go by and Christy has no memory of the events that happened. Katie shows up and asks Christy if anything else weird has happened. Christy says no, but then Katie says that weird shit has started to happen to her. Katie leaves Christy's home, and when she gets home, it's the opening of the first Paranormal Activity movie. So we see Katie pull up to the house, and we see Miko with all the cameras ready to capture some paranormal shit. And then we jump to October 9th. So Mika was killed on October 8th, 2006. That was the ending of the first Paranormal Activity movie. After that movie, it said Katie's whereabouts were unknown. Now we know that Katie went to Dan and Christy's house. Katie sees Dan on the couch and snaps his neck and he dies. And then she goes upstairs where she kills Christy and takes Hunter. A title card appears explaining that Allie came home from a school trip to find Dan and Christy's bodies, and Katie and Hunter's whereabouts remain unknown and the movie ends. To be continued.